back. Okay, well, anyways, for those of you who are here and you've driven long distances, for those of you there who are watching from, the Midwest, I suppose, I would like to welcome you to Irvine, the perfect city, God's city. It's the place where I grew up. It is, let me think here. It is the lamest, most boring, creepiest, most wonderful and safe manicured city in the world. Anyone from here? Oh, it's wonderful, absolutely. I was in Germany a few years back, and while I was in Germany, I went to an atlas, and I looked to California, and my hometown, Irvine, here, was in the almanac. Irvine. And I went back and remembered, okay, what did it say about Irvine? And I'm going to say this in German, so, that's what we do, because it sounds tough. So in German, it called Irvine die größte geplante Stadt in der Welt. The greatest put together and planned city in the world. We've got fake lakes and fake houses and fake people. Nobody actually lives up here because you can't afford it. So they're not real people, cardboard cutouts and robots. So here we are, right? The greatest planned city in the world, where I grew up. And of course, growing up here, I was used to things being perfect. I used to think that there were certain kinds of people, like the homeless, which they actually pick up in Irvine and then drop off in other cities. Way to go. And I thought that the homeless and the addict, we hear about the addict in Dare. You guys do Dare? Just against drugs or something? All right, and you'd come in and they'd scare you. Oh, they're addicts. They're like the trolls that live under bridges. They're dirty. They're bad people. Not like you kids in Irvine. They live out there. And this is what I thought. I thought the addict was that person sleeping in the gutter, covered in their own vomit in the back alley. They, of course, weren't like us. They weren't one of us. Of course, we don't have mistakes. It's Irvine. No garage colors clashing, no different kinds of roofs, nothing to worry about. Mommies and daddies walking around with their kiddos. They're looking like those pictures that come on that piece of paper in the frame right before you put your own family in. Perfect, nothing to see here. Move along. These are not the droids you're looking for. And of course, in this groß geplante Stadt in der Welt, there, as I mentioned, are no addicts. Until I became one. I became someone who literally slept in a gutter a few times. I literally slept in a back alley covered in my own vomit. And I tell these stories not out of any pride. They're terribly embarrassing stories. I prefer not to tell them. I'm not humble bragging. Addicts, when they get together, we don't say, hey, how was it for you? Oh, is this bad? No, we all know it's bad. So we get together and we talk about, okay, now what? And I can answer questions about different kinds of groups. But I'm going to move past that a little bit so that we can maybe bring this around to how it might affect you. Whether or not you become some degenerate, moral failure like I was for too long. So instead of telling these stories, how do we take addiction, something which I don't want to take anything for granted. Some of you might be dealing with some. Some of you might have a father or a mother, a relative, a brother or a sister. We know so many in so many different kinds of arenas. It's not just booze and coke and heroin. It's all a number of things. You'll see some questions that I've put, and I would love to answer some of those in the Q&A period. Let me ask a few questions that are on there. What can we be addicted to? What are the wide variety of things we can be addicted to? And it's kind of maybe on a spectrum. There are some things that are really damaging. Stuff where, I'll make a pitch. Coming this May, right, Steve? The book Monsters, Hope, Ex-Girlfriend's Hope, addiction, ex-girlfriends, and other dangerous things coming out. And I tell a bunch of these stories. But I talk about addiction in terms of a spectrum. So I was addicted to certain things. Now I'm addicted to other things. I didn't beat it. I'm addicted to candy. It happened. I never ate candy until I got sober, and it was candy it's very common because of the sugar. I eat candy all the time, like a 12-year-old. Last night I stopped to get gas, and I was like, I need candy. So I walk in, I get Starburst in the bag where they're like unwrapped already. No, whoa, really? Except the one I grabbed wasn't unwrapped already, and I ate a full Starburst with the paper, swallowed it. I'm waiting to see it come out. So So in all of this, I've found myself the token guy in the Lutheran Church to talk about addiction. Seems like that's the talk I'm giving over and over. And I want to make sure, especially with you young people and everyone, and myself, frankly, I'm giving these talks because they're good for me, to ask ourselves the question of how do we deal with addiction? How do we talk about it? How do we help people? And more importantly, how do we confess the love of Christ amidst it? It's very difficult. Sometimes we have to have that confession put in our ears because it's not coming. Something's blocking it. I guess that's point number one, practical takeaway number one, is that when you feel like you can't confess Christ because of a crippling addiction, because of something, go somewhere where someone's going to put it in your ears for you. It works. The word doesn't go out empty. I spoke a year ago at a conference, a year and 2 weeks ago. It was very recently. And it was the first time I ever talked about being an addict. It was on the very anniversary of my 6th year of being sober. And I told the stories, and they were, whatever. And at one point, at the end, a very kind person rose their hand, and they said, Dan, or whatever, Dan, so when in all of this did you finally become a Christian? Well, when I was 19. Yeah, I was baptized when I was 19 years old. That's when I became a Christian. But I thought these stories were all, before you were a Christian, and then you woke up one day, you became a Christian, and you just threw it off all to the side. You're magically fixed. Now, I started with substances and with alcohol but when I was 14. Not advisable. I became a Christian when I was 19, and I didn't get sober until I was 31. So what, just let go, 19 to 31? Certainly you weren't. Certainly you couldn't have been. How on earth could you confess Christ? During this time period, and it's somewhat embarrassing being here on campus talking about this, it's a little more uncomfortable than I thought. During my addiction, during some of the darkest years, I looked great. I didn't look physical, but I had my stuff together. As a matter of fact, you know what I was doing? I was a student here at Concordia. I was a smiley guy, getting good grades, had the badge, went off to graduate school. Oh, it's not as impressive as you think. And it's really not. We're a small group of people who are self-important. And things hadn't bottomed out, but I was studying by theology by day and Greek by night until I passed out, blacked out from a 12-pack. I was deep in it during the day. Looked sharp. Moved off to grad school, and I came back and was very, very pleased to come back here as a professor. Well, now I've got it all together. Because now I'm not doing the illegal drugs, because that could get me fired, and I need a paycheck because I've got kids. So I'll just do the legal ones. Sometimes they're more dangerous. Things were bottoming out here. Things got bad. Now, telling these stories, it's a little bit of self-pity, and you can look at me and be like, oh, that guy, at least he's better now. But I want to ask, am I in this worse than any other sinner? Is the addict who you know, a family member, what have you, are they worse than you? Are their predilections, are their secret things, is that worse? You know, perhaps I have a genetic deficiency. Perhaps there's something biological. Grandparents, 3 of them were alcoholics. Perhaps. Is it just a particular moral failing that I have? Genetics, morals, that I just can't deal with certain drinks, certain things? I can say, my name is Dan and I'm an alcoholic. I can also say, my name is Dan and I'm lactose intolerant. I am, biologically and morally inferior because I can't drink dairy. Sometimes they gave me like a whole milk in my latte instead of the soy. Oh, it's a bad day. I'm not going to recount it. Do you confess Christ with the same mouth that you drink almond milk? Oh, how dare you? I'm walking away. This is terrible. But I can say that despite all of this, this is kind of a happy story. So far. Tell people I don't have a drinking problem right now. I could get one really fast. But currently I don't, thanks be to God. And I've looked down the eye of that particular addiction, and with the help of God, I've been able to kick and punch and beat it down, to replace it with other things. So is my story, and I don't want you to think that my story is one of, he was bad and then he became good. He was not a Christian and then he became a Christian and things were wonderful. That's not the story, but I don't want you to lose hope. I don't want you to say, oh well, then I don't have to fight these things because I'm going to lose anyways and then I'll die and be resurrected and go to heaven. I don't have to be good. You're right, you don't have to be. So what's the problem and what's the answer? Here we go. The problem and the answer. The problem is sin. The problem is that St. Paul says, even the earth, all of creation is groaning. All of creation is groaning. I'm groaning in the gutter. Creation, as it's breaking down, is groaning. You're groaning in various ways because we're not on the other side yet. We're all going to groan and fail. Some are more high profile than others. Can you beat it? Is this a problem you can beat? Yes and no. You can beat it because you can, whatever yours is. I want you to think about that. Is it candy? Is it Starburst? Is it wrap? Is it drink? Is it whatever? Is it something you can beat? No. Is it something you can fight? Yes. And never give in to the idea that, well, I'm a Christian, sin's so bad, I can't fight it. Yeah, you can. Are you going to win? No. You're going to be planted in the ground and become worm food. If you don't get killed by that, you're going to get killed by that. But can you fight against it? Uh-huh. Can you punch and kick and try and bruise it as best you can? Yeah. Are you going to lose? Yeah. Do we give up hope? No. Do we say it's futile? So, eat, drink, and be merry. You can do all those things. It depends what you drink. So, what do? Where do I go? I feel bad, or I feel a little nervous. No, it's Concordia, but I'm seeing all the guys with the white things and the black. So I'm going to bring Bible verses up, and if I get it wrong, they'll storm the stage and knock me down. So here's where I went, because when you're an addict, you're just trying to get to the next day. You're not reading your Bible. You're not getting up in the morning and doing a quiet time or something. No. So where did I go? To 4 places. Write them down. I don't have them in a PowerPoint. Look them up. The first place I go is Romans 7. After all, a little crazy. Earlier I said, my name is Dan and I'm an alcoholic. And I have friends who get a little upset with that. Oh, no, you're not. You say, my name is Dan, and I'm a recovering alcoholic. Or my name is Dan, and I was an alcoholic. I say most usually, my name is Dan, and I'm an addict. The tense matters. Was I? Am I? Did I put it behind me? The tense is wonderful in Romans 7. But I see in my members another law at war with the law of God in my inmost self. But I see in my members another law at war with my mind, and making me captive to the law of sin which dwells in my members. Wretched man that I am, who will deliver me from this body of death? Earlier, where I was supposed to start reading, he says, for I know that nothing good dwells within me, that is in my flesh. I can will what is right, but I cannot do it. For I do not do the good I want, but the evil I do not want is what I do. Now, if I do what I do not want, it is no longer I that do it, but sin. This is Paul. This is tense. It was, is, huh? And people will argue about that. Professor here, Mike Middendorf, has got a little book that goes through it nicely. The second one that I would always go to, second of four, write this down, is the easiest one to remember because it is John 6:66. I always remembered that because mark of the beast. I loved this one because you know it's true, Mueller. It's the reading of Revelations. What happens? Jesus teaches some hard things. People don't like it, and everyone's kind of like, oh, it sucks. And then Jesus is like, hey, guys, you want to go? You want to take off because it sucked? It was mean. And Peter, I can just imagine him shrugging, saying, where else am I going to go? You alone have the words of eternal life. Right? Something that we sometimes sing in church. You alone have the words of eternal life. This takes me to number 3. Number 3 is Luke 18, probably my favorite. The parable of the Pharisee and the publican tax collector. Pharisee comes up and says, thank God I'm not like them. And then the publican. What does he say? Lord, have mercy on me, a sinner. He beats his chest. Where was he? At home doing this? Where was he? He was at temple. Where was he at temple? Hiding in the back. I told this story. I said, confessing Christ. When you can't do it, have someone else do it for you. At my particular church, there's a kitchen that leads to a back room, and you can hide there. And I remember going to church and getting there either in my own car or with my wife, and I would go back and I would stand back there. I was terribly, messed up, hungover, not ready for any sort of thing. And I would stand there until I heard the words of absolution. And I heard them. They were confessed for me. And then I would go and drive home or go pass out in the car. I'm not proud. It's a terrible, embarrassing story. But I needed those words confessed for me because they're true for me. When the woman asked, when did you come to faith? I said, I didn't come to faith. Faith came to me and stuck with me. I did when I was 19, when I was 25, when I was 30, when I was 31. It's 32 now, even. And then finally, Mark 8. Something I think we can all take a little bit of hope in. Mark 8, of course, has to do with the... I jumped around. Leave that one out. It's important, but I'll do this one first. Jesus goes with disciples. This is Mark 8, and he sits down with the disciples, and he says, who do you think you are? And Peter says, my name is Peter, and I'm a kind of silly disciple. No. He said, who do people say that I am? Who do people say that I am? Not who you are. Hey, you're an alcoholic, you're a mess up. Peter, you're the worst. You're the Christ. You're the Christ. Bingo. And then Peter says, wonderful. And Jesus says, way to go, favorite guy. He says, but you're not going to do that. Yeah, I am. Get behind me, Satan. And then finally, the verse with the Roman centurion, he says, I believe, help my unbelief. That's where I'm going to end here. Because even in the brightest of places, even in 1 year of sobriety or coming up on 7 years of sobriety, it's wonderful. Life couldn't be better. There's always good things, absolutely. But in there still lurks the darkness. The guy who's in his vomit, the guy who slept in the gutter. Now I do it in different ways. Here's the news. We're screwed. We can fight, but we're going to lose. That's how it works. But we keep fighting. And we don't give up hope because the opposite of hope is despair. The opposite of hope is despair, which says, it's useless. I'm going to binge Netflix. Why do anything else? It's not. Faith has come to you if you have been baptized. People can confess for you when you can't. The hope in that is the only thing you have. And I hope I will live with this. And I do hope. I hope specifically in the defeat of death, in the death of God himself and the resurrection. I really, really hope, because that's all I have.